Are all of these modern movements a natural result of the human mind evolving, liberating itself, and speaking up? Or are they orchestrated agendas done by those in power seeking to enslave the population through mind control? My name is Ira, I'm an esoteric researcher and mental alchemist, and today we're going to be talking about the principle of mind control and how it has manifested in some scenarios throughout human history. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. To begin understanding mind control, we have to understand the principle of mentalism. Basically, telepathy is only possible because the principle of mentalism states that everything is mind, that all of this is inside the mind of the all. We are inside and sharing a mind with God, or overall each other as well. Think of this reality as almost like a simulation made by consciousness for consciousness, and we are all one with it. So that means that we also share a mind with each other. This is something really interesting because it happens to different species as well, not just human beings. So there was this experiment done once with different monkeys in islands. Subject A of monkeys were given a tool and taught how to use a certain tool. And once these monkeys learned how to use this tool, they gave that same tool to island number B, where the monkeys had not been taught how to use this tool. Yet, somehow, some way, these monkeys figured out how to use the tool. How? Because they were sharing a mind. They were sharing a stream of consciousness. And this happens with species as well. This is really interesting because, for example, Michael Jackson, sometimes he would wake up and have these ideas of songs that would come forth, and he would immediately go to the studio, even if it was 3 a.m, to record that song. Why? Because he would say, if I didn't record it, Prince would take it. And this has happened all throughout history as well. I mean, there's a bunch of different studies that basically state how human consciousness tends to interact with one another to actually share information. This is why a person could discover something new in one side of the world, and immediately the same information is also discovered in another part of the world. It's almost like the moment that we download something from the God consciousness or God or source or whatever you want to call it, it becomes available not only to one person but to all of us as well. The principle of mentalism is a really amazing principle to understand how to navigate the mind of God. So if we are all one, that means that we also, of course, like I said, can share minds. This is the only reason why telepathy is possible amongst human beings. This is why you can, for example, be thinking of a friend and immediately they text you. Or you could be thinking of a song in your mind and your friend sings it out loud. It's all of these different things that, basically we are communicating with one another in an energetic language. But the question is, how does that happen? The first principle is the principle of mentalism and hermeticism, right? The principle of mentalism, the one that we're talking about. Hermeticism is basically quantum physics applied. It allows you to understand the power of the mind and the power behind the manipulation of reality in a sense. So you can actually learn how to navigate this material realm, okay? But the last principle of hermeticism is the principle of gender, and everything that comes in between is basically how to use the principle of mentalism and how to use the principle of gender and how they both work. The principle of gender states that everything in this entire reality is made up of duality, masculine and feminine energies. And these two principles are the batteries to the creation of everything, including yourself. If that is how reality is created, that means that is how your mind is manifesting reality right now. That also means that that is how you navigate the principle of mentalism. It is almost like a framework or a blueprint on how to navigate energy, or how to organize energy, manipulate energy, X, Y, and Z. So the interesting thing that comes along with this realization, and this is something that is also in the Kabbalion, by the way. If you have read that book, that's basically very much initiating people into Hermeticism. It's an amazing book. When it comes to telepathy, the only way it can happen, think of it like, you have a right side of your brain and a left side of your brain. The right side is feminine, the left side is masculine, right? Also, in your energy overall, you have masculine and feminine energies as well. The feminine energy within you is receptive, and the masculine is projective. So if you want to connect minds with a person and you want to do exercises of telepathy, for example, which I have done many times with friends, and overall, you can test this out, of course, like protect yourself. Again, this video is not about that. But if you want to receive a message mentally from a friend, your friend needs to send their message with their masculine projective energy. So they're projecting a thought onto your receptor. So you're receiving it with your feminine energy. Okay? That is how telepathy works. And it's really interesting because telepathy, of course, works with human beings. It could also work with animals and different even plants, right? But it also works with the higher mind. You receive with your feminine energy. Your feminine energy is like that portal to the spiritual and that portal to the collective and to the connection with other people. Okay? The feminine energy is extremely important along with the masculine. They're both meant to complement one another, of course. But your feminine energy is the receiver of intuition and the receiver of energy. Okay? While the masculine energy is the projector of energy, the direction of energy, how you decide to put that into the world, and how you organize energy, how you defer or almost like discern energy. Or when I say discern, I mean like what do you allow into your field? That is your masculine energy. And it is responsible for actually structuring everything around you. So here's the thing. With your feminine energy, you receive intuition and also receive energy. But with your masculine energy, you can create critical thinking. You create your individual expression of self. Because for the feminine energy, well, let's put it this way. The masculine is like the conscious mind that stimulates the creative portion of your mind, which is your subconscious, the feminine, okay? So think about it like this. To the subconscious mind, there is no other. It is just you. Because the subconscious mind is the gateway to source, oneness. And that is why when we have a spiritual awakening or when we begin noticing the power of the mind in our journeys, we say, do not say a bad thing to another person because your mind doesn't defer whether it's that person that you're saying it to or yourself. And there is a reason for that, because your subconscious mind is completely non-judgmental. It just takes everything it is given. It doesn't have judgment. It doesn't have those boundaries unless your conscious mind is filtering. This is why you need both of these energies. In order for the feminine energy, the internal world, the connection to others, the heart, the spiritual, to come into creation in this physical realm, it needs the masculine energy to become that individual expression of creative energy. But when telepathy turns into a black magic practice is when it is used against people's consent without them noticing. This happens when the masculine pole inside a person is taken out or severely damaged. So this is point number 2. How does telepathy turn into mind control? Mind control happens in subtle ways when somebody is planting seeds into your receptor without you noticing. It's very subtle, almost like a little that goes into your mind without you even noticing or being able to consent to it, simply because you don't have your masculine energy right there to give you that protection, to give you that discernment of like, oh, that's not what I like, or I don't really agree with that, or this is not aligned with who I am. Now, something like that can happen only when someone loses their masculine pole, okay? And we're gonna talk about how the masculine pole becomes almost damaged within a person, where it's not really lose their masculine energy, but their masculine energy becomes repressed or even really, really weak. So the masculine energy is the one that allows you to direct and organize energy. It allows you to filter out the energy you receive depending on what is aligned with your individual sense of self, your individual expression of God. If you don't have your identity set, and you don't have a strong one, you will become receptive to those implanting seeds around you. Without that energy, your receptor becomes defective. So it no longer channels a sort of like intuition and divine guidance. Like your feminine no longer really connects from that state of divinity. I mean, it could still sometimes, but it becomes defective. It begins to channel a darker side, channeling emotional chaos. Because without the masculine order within you, emotions and the heart and the internal world begin to dominate you. Okay? So that's when you go into the feminine fall of consciousness. And when you fall into this archetype of consciousness, what happens is that since you lose your individual sense of self and your ability to have critical thinking, you become a mass. And you think that you are in alignment with those ideas. You think that that's you, but really it is somebody else implanting seeds in your mind. So what happens is that you become a mass, okay? You become, it's not good to not have identity. It's not good to not be an individual. A lot of people demonize the ego, which is part of your masculine energy. Your ego is only bad when it begins to dominate you, which we're going to talk about right now as well. But the thing about the ego is that it is your individual sense of self. You're not meant to become like nothing and become a mass, and you're not meant to become a mass, period. You're meant to connect to the collective, okay? You're meant to connect to the collective and be in tune with the law of one, which you do through thanks to the feminine energy. But you're not meant to be, completely functioning from that place to the point where you lose your sense of self, right? Only through your sense of self and your individual expression of God can you truly give to the collective what it needs. Because imagine if everybody was a mass, there would be absolutely nothing to contribute to each other. Nothing. But that's what happens when you lose your sense of self and you become a mass. This is why you see so many people, they think the same things. The moment that the media says something, okay, the people agree. The moment a certain celebrity says something or says like a certain political point of view, etc., they all jump and they agree with them too. Okay, it's almost like they all have the same thinking. One says, something comes up and they all continue with that wave of thinking. And it's not them. It's that thoughts are being implanted in their mind because their receptor is broken. It is taberiada. I don't know how to say that word. It's like their battery is literally broken. They don't have that internal alignment that creates from that state of their individual expression of ether. It is a expression of something other than who they are. So if said person is dominated by their feminine energy and they don't really have that sense of discernment to decide what they actually align with or not, then who really is implanting these thoughts? Well, the answer would be those in the other extreme, the fallen masculines, the ones who function from a satanic level of consciousness. And this is why a lot of people say, oh yeah, we have these elites or people, the people who control the world, who own everything, all these corporations, all of this, big pharma, who own the food industry, who own all this stuff. They are, they say that they do satanic rituals, that they, bow down to Satan. And whether Satan is an actual entity or not, which to be honest with you, I don't know. Satan esoterically is also seen as Saturn, the archetype of Saturn, the black sun, the one that rules the root chakra. This is why Saturn is also seen as the black cube, right? Seen as the material, the ruler of the material. And Saturn is the masculine energy at an extreme, because remember, the feminine is the internal world and those dominated by emotions fall to it. But the other extreme is the people dominated by the ego, and that is Saturn. The rational mind has grown to an extent, creating Satan, right? These are interchangeable esoterically. So that's why they say that these elites, they worship Satan. Again, I'm not 100% sure if Satan's real or not. I've never seen Satan, etc. I do believe that certain entities are real, but I do believe that Satan is also an archetype of consciousness. But the interesting thing about the dynamic of mind control that these people do is that they replace the divine guidance of these people's feminine energy, their ability to receive true intuition from divinity, from source. They replace it with fake guidance, let's just say. They replace it with these thoughts that they implement into the person. So the person, instead of, actually receiving divine guidance, they listen to these thoughts that are implanted and they believe it's divine guidance. This is the archetype of the false prophet as well. There are so many people being misled nowadays, especially with spirituality. They're heavily misled by others who are false prophets, who implement or plant seeds in people's minds that later on are used as strings to manipulate. The only reason why these seeds even work is because they feed from negative emotions. Divinity doesn't need negative emotions because divinity is love. This is the thing, like they use those who are really receptive, they use their emotions against them. And remember, emotions are energy in motion. Emotion is vibration, and everything essentially is created from vibration. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting, because this is a concept also called animalistic magnetism, which you can look up. It's the ability to control humans, animals, vegetables, plants, like puppets, through vibration, through using emotions, vibrations against that thing that you're looking to control. But how does mind control happen? Through spirit science, because these people use spirit science to control the minds of others. Because at the end of the day, everything is spirit. You understand the spiritual, you understand vibration, you understand how to control somebody else's mind. This is what they're using. A person becomes a perfect subject to mind control when they are dominated by emotions and don't have internal order. They don't have order overall. When you are dominated by emotions, you immediately lose your sense of self. The more into the internal world that you go, the feminine energy, the more that you lose the masculine energy. You need a balance between these two. But when you go too much into the emotions, you become dominated by them, you lose your sense of self, you lose your individuality. And because you lose your individuality, which is your masculine energy, you lose your ability to use your willpower and to take accountability. Therefore, you become a victim to your circumstances. You become somebody that is maneuvered by the divine waters of life, but also the influences of those around you. So, and without you even noticing. This is why you become a perfect victim to mind manipulation, because the moment that people use emotions against you, you won't even notice, because you will be so mad or you will be so passionate about whatever that you won't even notice that they are using this against you. And when you give up your willpower and accountability, remember, the feminine cannot create reality without the masculine. You become unable to create your own reality, at least at a conscious level. So what happens? Your subconscious fears begin creating it, and these people feed from your subconscious fears to continue having created from your lowest sense of self. The elites, or however you want to call them, want to eradicate your sense of self. Because when you eradicate your sense of self, you lose the ability to have critical thinking. You lose ability to have individual thought, to be like, I don't really like that, or that's not part of my identity. I know who I am, because you know your identity, you know yourself. I know who I am, and that doesn't align with me, right? That's when you eradicate that in a person. That is when you stop using your power of mental stimulation, which leads to them implanting more thoughts into your mind. This is the extreme of the feminine energy. Again, when you become dominated by emotions. And esoterically, this can also be seen as the fall of Lucifer. Because remember, Lucifer is the morning star, also correlated with Venus, which is the sacral chakra. The sacral chakra is a feminine energy chakra with the sexual energy, the creative force, right? Sexual energy, by the way, is not just to fornicate. It is literally also to create life, to create reality. It is ideas and the ability to tap into that cosmic flow of creativity and emotions, pleasure, feminine energy overall, right? Presence. So when Lucifer becomes dark, or becomes like a fall of consciousness, is when it tries to tempt you into abandoning the path of the material as a form of enlightenment. It almost tricks you into, jumping the process of spiritual maturity, so you actually are able to, think that you are enlightened, you think that life is just a certain way, and it's not. So let me put this into perspective. Lucifer is seen as like that initial impulse or light of the feminine energy that gives people spiritual awareness. The only reason why Jesus, of course, was able to wake up and see life for what it was is because Lucifer, or that energy, like he awakened the Lucifer within him, like the spiritual energy, right? But what happens when you don't have that masculine discernment and the ability to ground that energy into the external world, Lucifer dominates you and you become a person that follows a false light. These are people that are heavily manipulated by empathy as well. And they don't necessarily need to have a spiritual awakening, but they are having a spiritual phenomenon ruling their life. It's not really good to be dominated by the spiritual just as much as it's not good to be dominated by the material. Life requires integration. Growth requires integration. And at the end of the day, you're not really here to just have pleasure in life. You're here to also build and to create and to express your individual expression of God into this world. When I said that Satan usually uses empathy because it knows that these people are very much empathetic. They know that it's not that they have their hearts open, but they definitely have a lot of emotion and a lot of sensitivity. They're hypersensitive. What happens is that Satan uses this energy, empathy. And a very amazing concept to explain this is Overton's window. This is a very well documented phenomenon that is psychological and quite literally is the way to implant seeds into the receptor of people, opening up the range or window throughout time as to what is accepted in society. And this is basically using what people care about or what they feel very emotional towards as a weapon against them. So for example, let's take the Holocaust. When I was little and I learned about the Holocaust, I was wondering and sitting there like, how did the Germans even allow such a gigantic genocide to happen, just like that? And it didn't happen just like that. It wasn't just a radical idea that was accepted from one night to the next. It was something that became accepted throughout time through small and little tiny increments that opened up Overton's window again. So first there was already pre-existing prejudice against Jewish people already, right? They were blamed for a lot of the economical problems in Germany, X, Y, and Z. And when World War I happened, that is when these people in Germany, they hit the roof. Everybody, was in a state of crisis. They were in the state of emotional, of this emotional chaos already. And that is when this propaganda began, basically making Jewish people the scapegoat. So first, the people had to be in a state of vulnerability where they were in the emotional and dominated by what's internal for the agenda to come in and implant the Jewish people as the scapegoat for these people's problems. And that's when German civilians began to open up Overton's window, more and more seeing Jewish people like they were, less than, like they were not human whatsoever, with more and more propaganda happening against that. And eventually there was laws that forbade, that took away human rights from Jewish people, that forbade interracial marriages and things like that, which made the image of the Jewish person inhumane to German civilians. And when these certain activities that Nazis would do to Jewish people, just like, segregate them, then put them in ghettos, then eventually, take them to camps and exterminate them, those were gradual steps that led to one massive genocide. Okay? Again, it didn't happen overnight, but as you can see, Overton's window was 100% causing this entire thing. How did one idea turn from radical, right? Like, oh, let's exterminate all Jews. People wouldn't have accepted that in stage number 1. But if you drive them through each stage, eventually they will accept this radical idea as something normal. Of course, I'm using the Holocaust as a great example because I think that's one of the main things I always ask myself, like, how did that even happen? But there are other examples, of course, that also portray this specific phenomenon happening in modern times. Now, what I'm gonna say here is completely my opinion, my observation. If it resonates with you, amazing. This is not a fact. This is not factual. Again, it's just my observation and how I am applying this ancient knowledge and this principle of mind control into what I see nowadays. So let's start off with the LGBTQ community. And I know many of you could be like, oh my God, why are you talking about that? It's not okay to be spreading this much hate. I am absolutely not spreading hate. Absolutely not. But I, as a bisexual woman, I like women. I've liked women since I could remember. I don't know if it's natural. I don't know if I was brainwashed into it. Absolutely, I don't know. So I'm not gonna let you know, like, hey, being homosexual is bad. Being bisexual is bad. I'm not, okay? But what I do know, and what I can accept and be humble enough to accept, is that there are people that were manipulated into being bisexual or being homosexual, and 100% changing gender, which you can't do, but they brainwash them into having a gender identity crisis. So let's start off first with the manipulation of, sexuality. A lot of the time, or what's happening quite a lot right now, is that there are testosterone levels decreasing like crazy. Why? Because we have pesticides in our crops like atrazine that chemically castrate human beings, turning the men homosexual, quite literally giving that chemical in their brain where they become attracted to another man and they stop being fertile, and it makes the woman aggressive towards men. Okay, this has been tested on frogs. Search up Tyrone Hayes. He was persecuted by the big pharma industry for releasing the information about the pesticides that they poured in their food. Not to mention the birth control that comes out of the urine of women, goes into the water supply and doesn't get filtered out, and then we have another man drinking it. I mean, it's uncanny that the levels of testosterone are dropping if you really just observe around and put your ego aside for a little bit. What they're doing is that they're taking these individuals, right, confused men and women, and because they are in this vulnerable, receptive state, these people implant thoughts as to who they are, what they should be. And this is seen all over media and all of these different movements being pushed onto people and everywhere at this point. And the really insane thing is that these exact chemical manipulations that they're doing with people are also causations of the gender being a construct movement, which was actually funded by the Rockefellers back in 1943 with the Kinsey reports, which started the whole gender ideology movement. And if you don't know who the Rockefellers are, those are one of the families that actually own everything in the world. You can also see Soros, for example, who's also a multi-billionaire, funding a lot of these LGBTQ movements. And if you just follow the money, you're gonna see where it's leading to, and it's gonna be uncanny. But to do that, you need to set your ego aside and question if what you're believing in may have been orchestrated. Now I believe that a person has all the right to do whatever they want with their lives. If they want to call themselves an elephant, I don't care. I don't care about that. Now, Overton's window comes into this the moment that you begin to normalize children changing gender, or children thinking that they're in the wrong body when they're born, because they are implementing this in schools. They are opening up the range of what is acceptable. First, they came up with a man can feel more feminine, or a woman can feel more masculine. And you already know we had a big problem with the whole gender roles, and what a woman was supposed to look like and be, and a man was supposed to look like and be, which I absolutely do not agree with. Also myself, I think everybody or anybody that is, really unlocking that freedom in themselves has the ability to see that, yeah, these gender roles were extremely strict, and a woman can definitely look masculine, and a man can look feminine too, whatever, right? Everybody's, free to do whatever they want in their lives. But here's where the problem lies. When you begin to take what people already are like, yeah, you know what, that's actually not right. Again, emotion, right? Emotion, and we all have all the right to think that way. When we begin to take this and use that to our, as a weapon against us, that is when Overton's window is in place. And then we begin to introduce the idea that a man can feel like a woman and a woman can feel like a man. Okay, that kind of makes sense. I can see that for sure. We all have masculine, feminine energy, and people, are free to express their gender how they want to. And then they come up with a man could turn into a woman, and a woman can turn into a man. I tap out there. I don't think that's possible whatsoever, unless you're intersex, right? And then they come up with a man who has turned into a woman, or has done that transition, is a woman, so they can be in women's spaces. That's a radical idea. That's where it gets radical. Because if you would have done that a couple years ago, when women absolutely were not going to accept that stuff, you would have seen that women have been oppressed for thousands of years. That we, to this day, majority of us have been sexually assaulted. And that's just a fact. That's a fact. And we deserve our own spaces, right? We deserve our own spaces. We deserve to have our own sports, right? And it's not reality to say that a man can be a woman and then play in women's sports or go into our bathrooms. I mean, unless you're completely gender passing and like I can't tell that you're a woman, I think it's radical to say that a man who still looks like a man who says they're a woman can go into the women's bathroom. That is radical, right? Where children are at, where women are the most vulnerable. But how could you possibly accept that idea? Well, if Overton's window was used on you. And as I just said, these were the steps. Other very radical thing that this community is doing is confusing children from the very get-go that they get to school. Implementing all of these different LGBTQ movements and activities in school, in kindergarten. And there's so many different examples of this. So many people deny that this is happening, but this is 100% happening. Okay? I've seen it happen. I have teachers that I'm friends with that see this happening all the time in their schools. So to be confusing a child from such a young age when they are the most vulnerable was only accepted because there was a community of individuals that were heavily influenced by this specific agenda. That's the only reason it was accepted. The idea that a child can transition is radical. It's insane. But it's only being slowly accepted because people are being emotionally manipulated by, a small seed that is slowly growing. The government benefits when people don't have an identity, when they are lacking their ability to discern whether something's right or something's wrong, because it was taken away from them at such a young age. They don't know who they are, and they essentially become hyper emotional because of this internal distortion when you remove the masculine energy. And they also, of course, become big pharma clients for the rest of their lives. For somebody to go through such an intense procedure at such a young age is insane, but it is being accepted right now. I actually have an entire video right here about the trans movement overall, because again, there's a whole spirit science behind the concept of becoming androgynous, right, non-binary, or overall switching gender, that is actually an inverted version of what alchemically is called Mercury the Androgynous. I would highly recommend you to watch this video because I go over the entire spirit science. Okay, so my third example is the whole movement of Black Lives Matter. Okay, so first of all, I'm absolutely not saying that Black lives don't matter, etc. I'm talking about the movement, the organization itself, not the people, the movement. So Black Lives Matter became a movement in a time of vulnerability for Black people. They were seeing a lot of violence towards them. It was being amplified through the media. And also we want to realize that Black people or their ancestors do come from horrible events, slavery. And it was super recent still. And because of epigenetics, that trauma is passed down. This is a fact. So it is super normal for them to be dealing with these emotions that have been passed on to them. Very normal. But these people, these elites know about that. And they use this against them. They use that empathy that they have for each other, that need of justice, against them like a weapon. So what they continue to push out in the media is this propaganda or this agenda of making them more victims than what they already are. So Black people do not see the opportunities around them and do not even have a chance at actually making it in life. This is humongous because there is so many different things and agendas that are at play to keep, minorities down, not just Black people. So with that being said, Black Lives Matter became an organization that fed off of these people's pains, that fed from their traumas, and began to amplify them as a way to not only make more money, but further enslave Black people. So they eventually begin to continue depending on their government and continue looking for the government to maintain them and provide for them. Okay, this is something that eventually funds or reinforces the idea that the government should be the owner of all the resources that we have as citizens. okay? It's really important to understand that Black Lives Matter, I mean, again, like the woman who funded Black Lives Matter, she bought a $2 million mansion with the money. None of it actually went back to the black community. None of it. It was all about money. Follow the money and you will see why they're actually pushing out these things. Absolutely, there is racism. That is a fact. There is racism, okay? There is. And they have all the right to be standing up against that. Okay, we know this, but again, Overton's window, okay, you seeing these issues that are important to talk about and beginning to use it against them. Okay, because when you continue to tell a person you're a victim, you're oppressed, this is gonna happen to you, and you don't have a chance at education, you don't have a chance at a job because everybody's racist. You stay in the state of like everybody's against me. Again, you go into the extreme of the feminine energy. You stop taking accountability for your life. You stop using your willpower. So we want to understand two things. Yes, there's trauma, but yes, you're also being, your identity is being taken away. And you are being implanted with a fake identity. So the important thing here is to notice that they use these important social subjects against us all the time. Okay, let's go into the other thing that is being really normalized right now, which is hypersexuality. So a couple years ago, we would not have been okay with porn stars being the influencers that our kids watch. But nowadays, it is like that. There are 14, 13, 12-year-old girls who look up to people like Anna Paul, who are OnlyFans models. Women like Ari Kitsia, also a gigantic influencer who was accepted into a brand deal with a major makeup company, Urban Decay. How did we begin to normalize the amount of hypersexuality being given to the world, the amount of being normalized on social media where kids are currently at, and even adults? Like the fact that porn or hypersexuality has been imprinted into our movies. The other day, for example, oh my god, I watched The Wuthering Heights with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, and this was 14 plus. And when I watched that movie, the entire movie was just straight up basically BDSM, like just straight up lust, but without nudity. That's why they said, oh, it's not for 14 plus. But everything was extremely sexual. This would not have been accepted a couple years ago. The age restriction has gone down for things that are more perverse, for things that are more explicit. And this is insane because, again, it's Overton's window. Hypersexuality is being normalized more and more through the music industry, through the influencers that we watch, through the media that we see, that we consume, the movies, the YouTube videos, everything is more sexual. And this is something that has been implanted a little by little. And you know where this started? With the sexual liberation for women. This was a needed movement, okay? Women for thousands of years have been actually prosecuted for enjoying pleasure. And women, if you didn't know, our bodies are literally temples of pleasure. We are meant to get to know our bodies. We have 8,000 pleasure points. We have double the pleasure points than men. And this is why our bodies are so complex, but they're also wired for having insane amounts of not only pleasure, but being able to tap into higher states of consciousness through orgasms and pleasure overall. This is extremely important for women to know. This is why the sexual liberation movement was so important for women. But there is a fine line between sexual liberation and getting to know yourself and no longer feeling shame for that part of you, and then making a profanity out of it. It is normal that purity culture was rejected by women and that we rebelled against it because we absolutely were not meant to live in those situations either, okay? That is an extreme. That is control. That is the masculine energy, again, seeking to control women's bodies, seeking to make women private property. But the other extreme, which is the one being pushed right now, is seeking to make women public property. Taking this act of rebellion and against using it as a weapon against humanity. I feel like people have really lost the plot when it comes to all of these different subjects. It's either one extreme or the other. There's no more balance. I mean, there's a million reasons why hypersexuality is wrong. I actually, if you comment yes below, I'll make an entire video just about hypersexuality because it is a weapon that's being used against humankind. Like to waste your chi, your sexual energy, your creative energy, and leak it out. Men and women, by the way, men who pay for these subscriptions, men who watch these things, and the women making it both are just as culprits, as much of a culprit as each other. They are both up sustaining a system. They are both literally the reason why these elites or people that control everything laugh, because they no longer have to do the work themselves. We have these people upholding it all by themselves because they think, we have the women thinking it's liberating, it's empowering, when we all know it's not. And then we have the men who just don't want to take the accountability to actually stop and control their lust and actually stop being such a weak person. Either way, my entire point is that slowly throughout time we have accepted hypersexuality to be something so normal that even our children nowadays are falling for it. I myself have become victim of hypersexuality thanks to the things that I saw on the phone when I was very young, or on the computer. And imagine how it is now, because I was born a long time ago. Imagine how it is now with the amount of information and things that are in the internet, that are on social media. Because in my time, when I was younger, there was no social media, right? It was just computer. If I found those things in my time on the computer, imagine what these kids are finding right now on social media when everybody has access to it now. And there's these kids with iPads on their face since they are born, okay? You have no idea how much this tampers a child's brain. And the fact that it's being so normalized essentially means that eventually children will get their hands on it, and they already are doing it. Because if I found it, they're definitely finding it right now. But again, this has been something slowly implemented throughout time. I completely understand the whole sexual liberation thing, because I 1000% agree with it, right? It's very important for us to explore ourselves with our partner, because sexuality is an essential part of your adult life. But again, when it comes to this, there's a whole other side to it, and that's when you normalize things such as hookup culture as well, with, for example, red pill communities saying that men's body counts do not matter, right? Saying that the more amount of women that you sleep with, the more powerful you are as a man. But little did they know that quite literally completely disconnects them and desensitizes them to intimacy, so now they can't connect to women, losing the whole plot of life, destroying the family unit as well. And of course with women as well, thinking that sexual liberation means that you should sleep around with everybody. Okay, there is a balance again, because purity culture is an extreme, but hypersexuality is another one. And again, it has been slowly implemented into our brains thanks to the things that we watch, the things that we listen to, and the people that are right there sending the seeds over to our receptors. They need something that we care about and that we feel we should be doing in order to use that and twist it and make it dark or make it a profanity to control us. The entire gist of mind manipulation is that, again, it happens slowly throughout time. Same thing with socialism, that is now being pretty much glamorized by a lot of people in the West, and it makes me really mad because I'm half Cuban. My family is currently in Cuba living under a socialist regime, under a communist regime, because communism is just the final stage of socialism. And we wonder, how does that even happen? How do people accept things like that? And it's because they're in this state of vulnerability, and then the government implements these different principles of like, oh yeah, it's the rich people's fault. We need everybody to be the same. Everybody should have the same resources. Everything should be owned by the people. And then they end up rooting for a movement like that, which essentially means that there will be no private owned facilities or factories or in general anything. Again, privacy is of the individual. The private owned things and businesses is of the individual. It is the only way that you can fight back against a corrupt system. Okay? I don't like capitalism either, of course, but all systems are essentially going to be corrupt at some point, and socialism absolutely doesn't leave you anything of your own to fight back once it does get corrupt. Right? This is why the people of Cuba, when their system got corrupt, they had no guns, they had no private property, everything was taken away from them, and now they're starving because they depend on the government for resources. That's what it leads to, because again, it was an idea accepted throughout time, and now we have a lot of people in the West who are starting to accept radical ideas like that because they are suffering. There's people working back-to-back jobs who still cannot afford their groceries. Of course, that has to do with the system that we are currently in. But again, accepting socialism is not a way out. There's other way out, but it's not that one, because that one has been tried many times. I'm not gonna get too much into the whole socialist thing. I'm actually gonna make an entire video just about that, because there's so much misinformation going on, especially in the West, especially about Cuba right now. And I do know that deserves its own video because my family is currently there again, And it's important for me to speak up for those who are there and cannot speak to you about their true situation that you're being brainwashed about. So with that being said, there are so many more examples that I'm sure now that you have gotten the gist of what mental manipulation is or mental control is, you can see all of these different things. You're welcome to comment them down below as well. I would love to research these different movements that are rooted in mind control as well. So if you have any, let me know. So to conclude this episode, I just wanted to say to take care of yourselves, to always use your ability to think, to set your ego aside, because most of the time, we tend to think that we are right about certain subjects. I'm not saying that I'm not brainwashed. I'm probably super brainwashed as well, just like everybody else. We don't even know what the truth is at the end of the day. I think it's important to use your discernment to try your best to have critical thinking of your own. And now that you know all of these different tactics that they use for mind control, I'm sure that you have thought of other scenarios, and you're more than welcome to comment them down below and share them with others, perhaps to, share some light, right? It's very important to talk about these things, to notice them, and to be humble enough to accept that it may be happening to us. So remember, it is essential that you balance and harmonize both energies. They are just as important as one another. There is no such thing as one that is superior than the other. Absolutely not. They are meant to complement one another. Without the feminine energy, you become dominated by the ego, overtaken by the material world. And without the masculine energy, you become dominated by the emotions, overtaken by the internal world. None of these are beneficial to humankind whatsoever. What we need right now more than ever is balance, to mend the relationship between these two energies at a global level. Okay, and then we will begin to up spiral as a human civilization, and I really do believe so. That is when we will begin to see true peace, harmony, and alignment in this world. So with that being said, my name is Ira Morphy. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.